Martha Washington was not pleased when her husband was elected president. In protest, she even skipped his inauguration. The daughter of wealthy planters, she believed her husband was foolish to get involved in all this political fuss. However, Martha had received a fine upbringing and knew what was expected of her in such a situation. So, after some thoughtful consideration, she rolled up her sleeves and took on the duties of the First Lady. After all, Martha Washington was the very First Lady in the history of the United States. She was born in the first half of the 18th century on her father's plantation in Virginia. Her father was an immigrant from England, while her mother had French and Irish roots. The family fortune grew year by year, and who wouldn't want to increase their wealth? That's why Martha, the eldest daughter, was married off to the wealthy Daniel Custis. The groom was 20 years older than the bride and owned a vast estate on the banks of the Pamunkey River, aptly named the White House due to the color of the residence. In total, Custis owned 5 plantations and 300 slaves, and the 18-year-old Martha quickly began learning how to manage this considerable estate, and she excelled at it. The young plantation mistress was intelligent, resourceful, energetic, and very inventive. She would rise before dawn to handle the accounts, then assign tasks to the staff and tend to the children. The couple had 3 sons and 1 daughter, but only one of them, John, lived to adulthood and had descendants. Unfortunately, happiness was short-lived. 7 years later, Custis passed away. Martha, a young and very wealthy widow, didn't have time to mourn. She needed to negotiate with London merchants who purchased from her and oversee the cotton harvest. She hardly noticed the advances of her neighbor, Charles Carter. However, another admirer, George Washington, was hard to miss, standing nearly 6 feet 3 inches tall. A handsome man with considerable wealth, he occupied Martha's thoughts as much as his appealing appearance and intelligence. So 2 years later, they married. Records indicate that the wedding was simply lavish. The groom dazzled in a blue suit embroidered with silver, while the bride wore purple. Both the ceremony and the honeymoon took place at the same White House. Afterward, Martha Washington moved to her husband's estate, Mount Vernon. Martha continued to manage the plantations, while her son took a position with George Washington. Young John Custis died of typhus, having married and fathered a family of 5 children. The 2 youngest, Eleanor and George, were taken in by the Washingtons, while the older girls remained under their mother's care. Mrs. Washington kept a close eye on her husband's career as well. During the War for Independence, she frequently visited the military camp and, according to eyewitness accounts, helped boost the soldiers' morale. She loves her husband dearly, wrote General Lafayette, and knows how to connect with ordinary people. For everyone she spoke to, Mrs. Washington found just the right words. However, Martha did not approve of George Washington's further career advancements. President of the United States? What kind of position was that? On the most significant day of her husband's political life, Mrs. Washington was busy helping her granddaughters with their embroidery. But she quickly changed her attitude toward his work. Realizing that he truly needed her, she became his main assistant and advisor. The very First Lady took on a multitude of responsibilities in New York and Philadelphia, which were then considered temporary capitals. During the president's second inauguration, Martha was present in the front row. However, this ceremony was much more modest. The president faced considerable criticism and preferred to avoid drawing too much attention to himself. The new capital under construction was not yet named Washington. Its preliminary name was Georgetown. The first president hardly had a chance to see this city. After leaving office, he was caught in a heavy rainstorm. A severe cold led to the quick demise of George Washington. Martha survived him by just 3 years. She became the only woman in the United States whose portrait appeared on banknotes. And do you remember the name of her plantation? The White House. The same name was given to the residence of American presidents, where neither Martha nor George Washington ever lived. The first head of state to reside there was Thomas Jefferson in the year 1801. But that's a whole different story. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, and thank you for your comments.